Is your yarn stash out of control? Do you have secret hiding spaces? Are you a stash squirrel who will just tuck little bits of yarn into any place you can find? I know that my stash gets a little bit out of hand, even with trying to purchase yarn mindfully. And with a recent cross-country move, things had gotten a little bit out of hand and I needed some help. I'd seen a lot of positive reviews of Marie Greene's new book, The Joy of Yarn, and I decided to pick up a copy and see what it was all about. As the force behind Olive Knits, Marie Greene definitely has a lot of experience with managing lots of yarn on a day-to-day basis. The promise behind The Joy of Yarn is this idea that you can organize your own yarn stash as beautifully as if it's in a yarn store and you can just go and shop your own stash. And that's a great idea. Essentially, The Joy of Yarn asks you to find all of those secret hiding spaces where you've squirreled yarn away, figure out how much space your stash is actually using, and for a little bit of a wake-up call, you're actually going to figure out how much of your rent or your mortgage you're spending on just storing your stash. Then you're going to decide how much you actually can afford to or how much you want to spend on that space, and then you pare down your stash from there. So far, so good. Next, there are several different ways that she suggests to organize your yarn: by color, by project, by fiber. She really pushes people to organize by color and to get away from using those big plastic bins because they're really difficult to dig through when you're looking for a specific skein or a specific project quantity of yarn. Then the real work is going to start. You're going to inventory your yarn, making sure that you note color, yardage, weight, fiber, all of the things that you would be looking for in a specific yarn when you go to start a new project. You're also going to use that information along with what you're actually using your yarn for to decide which yarns are going to stay in your stash and which you're going to let go of. My favorite suggestion was to use magazine file boxes as yarn storage. I used that suggestion as I recently reorganized the protein fiber section of my stash, and I was really pleased with the results. It utilizes the vertical space on my shelves while keeping those unruly hanks from spilling out all over the place. Plus, since the file boxes are narrow, it's easy to see what I have at a glance instead of pawing through those bigger storage cubes. I wasn't a huge fan of the real emphasis on organizing everything by color, but that really comes down to how I use fiber. I tend to use my cotton and linen yarns for weaving and my protein fiber yarns for pretty much everything. It's important to me to have those separate so that I know what I'm working with for each individual project. Joy of Yarn has ideas for keeping your stash tidy over time, as well as ideas for working with frogged yarn, how to store works in progress, as well as 10 patterns for working with stashed yarn. Those patterns are especially good for kind of helping you figure out how to work with those odds and ends that build up over time. It's a beautifully edited and photographed book, and it certainly challenges readers to do some real work around maintaining an organized and beautiful yarn stash. One pitfall of the book was that it seemed to encourage you to go out and buy a whole new storage system instead of working with what you already have and then going from there. It also seemed to encourage you to choose your yarn storage system and potentially buy it before you actually pared down your yarn stash. I can see some benefits to that, especially if you're trying to be really specific about the amount of space that your yarn stash is going to occupy. But I think the excitement for buying something new is easier to muster than the energy and the dedication that it takes to actually do that hard work of going through your stash and making sure that what you've got is what you need and doing the hard work of paring down the things that you don't need. So if you're going to go through the exercises in this book, I would suggest that you maybe hold off on getting a new yarn storage system and kind of work with what you have for a while as you're paring down the stash, and only after you've really identified everything that's in your stash, then you can decide how you're going to store it. My last beef with this book is that it's just a little bit too pretty. Now, I know books need to be pretty to sell, And that's not what I'm getting at. What I'm getting at is that I feel like it's just showing one shelf or one thing against this stark white background, and that makes things look very clean and organized, but it's not showing the whole picture to me. It's not showing the whole yarn stash. It's not showing the whole system. It's showing parts of the system. And I feel like it's just a little too Instagram ready. It's just a little too curated. It doesn't feel quite like real life to me. That's why I've given you a peek at my whole stash. And if you're looking for a book that shows more complete artist spaces, as well as the systems and processes that they have used to organize those spaces, I would highly recommend that you check out Love Your Creative Space. I'll link it in the description below. So what's my final stance on The Joy of Yarn? I give this book a solid 4 out of 5 stars. It's worth it if you have a yarn stash that you need some help organizing, as long as you're ready to do the work. But if you've read more than 2 of the home organizing books that have come out in the last 10 years, maybe you've read The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up, or The Home Edit, or one of my favorites, Tidying at the Speed of Life, you've probably already heard a lot of the concepts in the book, and the only thing that's different is going to be that it's specifically about yarn. What is your favorite way to organize your yarn stash? Do you organize everything by color, or are you a stash squirrel putting anything anywhere you can find it? Let me know in the comments below. As always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.